So the title of this presentation is called Mastery in CS, but that's really just one component of what I want to chat about. So really, if we want mastery to work, there are other components that have to be also implemented. So my focus is going to be on implementing self-paced, blended, and mastery-based CS classes. So my name is Sarah Strong, my pronouns are she, her, and this is my keynote. All right, so here's an overview of what we'll be going through. So first of all, who am I? Because I haven't really introduced myself much, but I will get to who I am. So why these three things? So why self-paced, blended, and mastery-based? Why those three? Why is this model good for teaching computer science? How can replit teams be used with this model? And lastly, what do students think of this model? So I think this model is fantastic, but that doesn't mean anything unless students feel the same way. Unfortunately, students do like this model a lot, and I'll be sharing some of their feedback as well. All right, so the first thing is, who am I? So I could just tell you who I am, but I think it'd be more fun if I had you figure it out. So I have a bunch of clues. I'm going to read them one at a time and then give you some time to try them out. So here you go. All right, figure out Ms. Strong. First clue is, I've been teaching computer science for N years, where this expression. The country I teach in is the value of integer max value in Java. The grade level I teach is the size of this set. I teach all the following languages that are truthy in Python. True or false, I am in my 30s. True or false, I've watched over 3,000 hours of anime. And my favorite band is the color yellow in hexadecimal. So I think I'll just have you in the chat answer if you know it, and we'll stop either when everything is figured out or no one is writing anything in the chat. And I cannot see the chat, so I will definitely need Tariq to help me out. If someone has answered anything, just let me know, please.
Well, I guess you are in your 30s, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm exactly 30. I know I look like I'm 18, and I get that all the time. And students are confused, like, why is there another student who's my teacher? But no, I am 30. I'm a typical millennial.
Okay, no problem with that. Well, yeah, I've figured out a question. Good for me.
Which one?
So I guess someone said that the anime one is true.
It is true. Yeah, I tell this to students because a lot of students, especially in this generation, also love anime. So it's just kind of a nice thing to have in common with them. And I try not to go overboard during class time talking about anime, but just one-on-one from time with a student, we'll talk about anime once in a while. So I tell them to students. And yep, that is true.
So there are a lot of answers. I'm going to try to say all of them.
So I think since people have answered them, I think it's just faster if I just let you know what they are. So I've been teaching for 5 years. I'm going into my 6th year. I teach in Canada, and you might be able to tell by my pronunciation of Java that I'm Canadian. I teach high school, so the grades I teach are 10 through 12 because there's no grade 9 computer science in my school. So for my grade 10 course, I teach HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with an emphasis on the P5.js framework. For grade 11, I teach Python, and for grade 12, I teach Java. The other one is, my favorite band is The Killers. I like all these bands, but I like The Killers the most. So that's my introduction. Hopefully that was fun and a nice minds-on activity. All right, so this model that I'm hyping up. Why? Here's why. So this is from a framework called the Modern Classrooms Project. So the Modern Classroom Project is a non-for-profit organization. It is made by educators for educators, and it's fairly new. It came out in 2019, and it kind of took off during the pandemic. So even though it's not a virtual, I guess, distance model, it still worked. So a lot of teachers picked it up, and I picked it up just by hearing about it and realizing that this is actually exactly what I want for my computer science classes. So the framework has 3 pillars. We have blended instruction. It is a self-paced structure, and the grading is mastery-based. And they have That is my dog yelling at an Amazon worker. The Modern Classroom project link is here, so you can visit at the end. This is an amazing product that I highly recommend. I will be telling you all about this. All right, so the first thing is self-paced learning. All right, so why should we self-pace? So my plan was to just, oh my goodness, my dog. My plan was to have you in the chat discuss why self-pacing might be useful, but to save some time, I think I'll just tell you some of the reasons why I find it useful and some things I've observed about students who do self-pace. So the first thing is that students take different amounts of time to process and learn the same information. So it's just not fair that we're setting the same pace. If we have the same duties for each student, but we know that each student takes a different amount of time, it's simply just not fair to them. Another thing is that we have students who face different barriers in life that affect their ability to learn. So if they're going through a lot of challenges, if their parents are getting divorced, or if they're going through a lot of challenging things, that's going to affect their ability to learn. And just allowing them to self-pace, letting them work when they are, basically when they are ready to learn and when they are most productive, respects any challenges that they face in life. Another thing is that self-pacing helps students develop resilience, motivation, confidence, and other important skills. So we have all these skills that we want students to learn, but with the traditional model of basically having a lecture, students take notes, students practice, students do homework, rinse and repeat, it doesn't really provide a whole lot of opportunity to do that, but this model really amplifies their abilities to learn these important skills. That's why self-pacing is important. All right, so I typed it up, but how do we actually do it? There are a lot of ways to do it. So the most common way that a lot of you probably have done is a self-paced lesson. The idea is that you give something for students to do and it's due by the end of class, or maybe if it's homework, it's due by the end of the next class. That is technically still self-paced because you're not micromanaging exactly what they do each minute or each set of minutes. Really, they just have a due date, and within that time, they can use it however they want. They can get it done the first 10, they can spread it out, they can procrastinate and get it done at the end. That is one way of doing self-pacing. Another and more research-backed way is to self-pace by weeks. And this is the way that the Modern Classroom Project recommends, but I kind of found that out after I'd already done it my way. And the way I do it, which I actually found it to work, is to self-pace individual units. My units are quite long, so yeah, there's definitely some skepticism about it, but I've made it work. And another way of self-pacing, this is the last way that I know of, is to essentially self-pace each semester. This is basically how online courses work. Any asynchronous course where you work at your own pace, the only real due date are the reporting periods, either at midterm or at the end or both. So there are different ways we can do it. So self-pacing doesn't mean you have no due dates. You can have soft due dates, you can have due dates at reporting periods, but ultimately you're not micromanaging each minute of the day. That's what self-pacing is all about. So I'm going to show how I implement self-pacing. So this is for my grade 11 Introduction to Computer Science course. So the way I structure it is that I have 4 units just because it makes the math easier. And I release them one at a time. And I release the next unit when a bunch of students are ready for it. So it's not like I have a set date when I release it. I just release it when students are ready for it. And each of the units build on each other. For example, if you want to go on to Unit 2, it's really helpful to master Unit 1 first. And I highly recommend that students fully complete Unit 1 until before moving on to Unit 2, because otherwise they will get stuck. They will find that they don't know what they need to succeed. And essentially, the mastery ensures that they are ready to go on to the next thing successfully. Furthermore, each unit ends with a culminating project. So it's usually a game. It doesn't have to be a game, but my students tend to love games. And I make the condition that they have to spend at least 3 days on it. So some students do rush it in one night and then spend 2 days fixing it by adding line comments. They do kind of play the game a little bit, but enforcing that students take some time on it, I think is really important for them to learn project management. Because when you are working on something over a long period of time, you have this idea at the back of your head that you're trying to figure out. Maybe you're trying to debug something, maybe you're trying to figure out what do I implement next. But it's having that downtime means you're a lot more productive when you are working on it, coding through your project. So I enforce that they have to spend at least 3 days on it. So the way I grade, so the midterm marks are determined by how far along they get the first two units, because there are 4 altogether, so it's just the halfway point. And then their final mark is determined by how far they get along in all 4 units. So basically, they might not get to unit 4, but that's okay. And depending on where they are in unit 1, 2, or 3, that will determine what mark they get. And for this model, a lot of students really want to do well, and they want to know, how do I get 100? So here's what I tell them. So if you want to get 98, 99, or 100, there are a couple extra tasks in a bonus unit, and these are ones that basically extend beyond the course or are kind of on the very high end of what is the most challenging things in this course. So this allows students to basically work on tasks that are really challenging, but at the end, they really do deserve those high marks if they want them. All right, so if we want to self-pace, we need to be organized. And one of the ways to do that is a pacing tracker. And this is a way to let students and teachers know, well, for students, it lets them know what they're supposed to do next and how far along they are. And for teachers, it lets us keep track of where students are. So here's a couple of ways to implement them. So you can choose between showing the progress through a lesson, a unit, or the entire course. So you can have individual trackers depending on whether you want to focus on individual lessons, units, or courses. You can choose to show it to all students in one giant tracker with all students, or just if you want to show just their row and they can't see anyone else, that's also a choice you can make. You can also choose to either fill it in yourself or have the students fill it in themselves. That's completely your choice as well. And also you can choose whether it is public or private. So you can choose whether students can see everyone or they can only see themselves. I'm going to show what mine looks like. And for this, what I'll do is I'll have you look at it, and then in the chat, ask any questions you have about my tracker. So here is my tracker. And again, I cannot see the chat, so if you mind just reading a couple questions people have, I can answer them. I think I'll check the chat myself in case the moderator is not able to do that. Okay, I have an infinite screen, so I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Is that a good? Okay, here we go. All right. What strategies do I use to hold students accountable if they're working at different paces? Because I'm not doing lectures, I have all my class time to talk to students. I spend all my time either marking or going around and chatting with them individually. And if they're behind, they will know it. They will know that I know. And I will ask them how things are going, if they're stuck on anything. And another good strategy is to pair them up with someone who's at a similar pace, and they can support each other through that. All right. Wouldn't the ones who are ready and waiting get bored? Yes, and I'll address that at the end. It's correlated to the grade. Yes, it is. Students like that because even though I want to emphasize that grades do not equal learning, students care about their grades, and for high school students, it affects their scholarships, it affects their privileges. So for example, they might get allowance based on grades, they might get to go to a birthday party based on how high the grade is, or they might lose their phone if they get a bad grade. So it does matter to them. So even though I think grades are trivial, students do not feel the same way. So I do make it obvious what grade they're at. How is complete determined? I will get to that in the next section. How do I handle progression with missing assignments? I tell them, well, ultimately if they're missing something, they will realize they're missing it because of the way I built the course. If they get to a project and they realize that there's something they're missing, they will not be able to finish it. They have to go back and complete it in order for the project to make sense. How many students do I have? Between 28 and 32. This is just a snapshot, basically. So I just kind of made a minimal version just to get the idea down, but my actual tracker is much longer with all my students. All right, I'll go back to sharing my screen. Okay. All right, so self-pacing was one of the 3 pillars. Another one is blended. So why blended? So the simple reason is that in order to self-pace, you can't have live lectures because live lectures will determine the pace for your students. If you are saying, okay, kids, today we're doing this and doing a lesson on it, that's not self-pacing. They're just not compatible. So the idea is that you replace it with video lessons and small group instruction. So instead of a whole class lesson where you're delivering the same content to everyone at the same time, you can do video lessons instead, which allows self-pacing to happen. And for students who are falling through the cracks, you do small group instruction to keep them up, basically. All right, so if you're making videos, there are a lot of options. It's not just screencasts. So screencasts, a very common one for computer science because you're live coding, you're showing something on your screen. Screencast makes sense, but it's not the only option. So if you like lecturing, if you really want to do your daily ritualistic oral presentation, just record them. That works too. Just get your phone out, get a tripod, and record yourself at a board if you want to do that. That is an option too, right? And another common option, especially for math and science teachers, is to just use the document cameras. They might show a worksheet or something under document camera. You can just record it instead of projecting it, and that will provide an MP4 file probably, and you can just share that. So it's not just screencast, although screencast is definitely the most common for computer science. All right, why videos? So why should we replace lectures with videos? What are the benefits? There are a lot of benefits. In fact, I really believe that videos are way better than live lessons, and I will explain why. All right, first reason, students who are absent have a fair shot at catching up. So with lectures, once you presented it, it's over. You can't revisit it. You can give students a note about it, sure, but they miss the actual lesson. Whereas with videos, you can watch it whenever you want. You never actually miss it. All right, so for students who get help at home, so students who are struggling and are too embarrassed to ask you for help, if they get a parent or a tutor or a friend or a neighbor to help them, they can share the videos with them. They're basically experiencing the class with their helper. And instead of just the helper helping them with their homework, they also help them understand the lesson. Whereas if you have a live lesson, you can't have someone like join you next to you in the class, but at home after school, you can share videos with people who are helping you. All right, another reason, so students can rewind, rewatch, pause, speed up, speed down, turn on subtitles. These are very powerful learning tools. So if students miss something, they rewind. If they want to revisit, they rewatch. If they want to stop and think, they pause. If I'm talking too fast or too slow, change the speed. If you can't hear me, or it's too loud, or you want to hear what I'm saying, or you want to read what I'm saying, turn on subtitles. These are all possible with videos, but not live lessons. Another thing is that videos are straight to the point, whereas lectures tend to be long and have tangents and disruptions. So my videos are all under 7 minutes, usually 4 to 5 minutes. I go straight to the point. I don't go on a tangent. I don't tell, I tell some jokes, but I don't like go on a wild tangent telling something completely unrelated. I go straight to the point. Every video is on one concept or a few related concepts. And if there's a disruption, I stop and re-record. Whereas in a class, because we have the tendency to want to fill up time, we tend to rant a bit, go on tangents. And if someone's on their phone or someone walks in or an announcement goes on or the fire alarm goes off, those are disruptions. And those are just not applicable in videos. If there's a disruption, you just stop, re-record, and then the new video will not have these disruptions. And I think one of the main reasons is that because I'm not spending my time at the front of the class addressing everyone or trying to help everyone at the same time, which doesn't really work, it frees up my time. So I can spend more time helping students. My role is not to lecture at them, it's to help them and to spend time one-on-one or in small groups doing that. There's more. I have more reasons why videos are good. All right, so students who have poor vision or hearing can see and hear videos clearer than lectures. So we have this equality issue where students at the front of the class have a better view of the board and are closer proximity to the teacher, and students at the back have the opposite experience. But with videos, we're all the same distance to our screen. And we can always turn up the volume, show on captions, things like that, things we cannot do with live lessons. All right, what about students who have trouble focusing? So students with ADHD, for example, live lessons are terrible often. It's a really bad experience for students who cannot focus, even if they want to and even if they try to. And with videos, because you can pause and rewatch, if they find themselves dozing off, they can just pause, watch it later. That's that. All right, another thing is English language learners, so multi-language learners, can turn on auto-translated subtitles. This is amazing. So for students who are learning more than one language and English is not their strongest language, what they can do is listen in English and have the captions in their home language. That is an awesome accommodation for them. This is the last slide on why videos. Okay, so in case of unexpected distance learning days, there are very few changes to the plan. Whereas if you have a lot of in-class activities, if you suddenly have a snow day or an emergency remote day, there are a lot of things that have to change. But with this model, the only thing that changes is the medium. Instead of me going around during class time, I have a Google Meet open. Nothing else really changes. They're still working on the same thing. They're continuing what they did the previous day. There isn't really a whole lot of logistical hassle with this model. All right, I'm pretty sure this is the last thing. All right, it makes it easy for substitute teachers. And I put supply teacher here because that's what we call them in Canada. We call them supply teachers, and I actually did supply teaching for a couple of years. And when I did that, I saw a lot of really convoluted lesson plans. Whereas this model is straightforward. Basically, the lesson plan for a substitute teacher would be students working at their own pace. Here's progress tracker if you want it. Just walk around, chat with them, make sure they're on task. That's the entire lesson plan. It's straightforward, easy for subs, and there's just no hassle for them. All right, next up, how do we actually make these videos? So here are some tips. So some of these are straight from the Modern Classroom project, and others are just advice that I have. All right, so the first thing is to keep videos shorter than 6 minutes. So the research shows that for high school students, the sweet spot is between 3 and 5 minutes. Between 6 and 9 is okay-ish, but they do start to doze off a little bit. After 9 minutes, you have lost them. So even though if you're doing a lecture, you might talk for like 20, 30 minutes, you can't do that with videos. If you want to present a 30-minute lecture in videos, chunk it up. So basically focus on one thing at a time, make a 5-minute video on it, do that 4, 5, 6 times. That is your lesson in video form. All right, another thing is to speak at a fast pace using conversational language. This might seem really unintuitive because why would you talk fast if you want students to understand? And the reason is they're videos. You can rewatch, you can rewind, you can adjust the speed. And when you talk faster, you can make the videos shorter. And you also don't want to sound like you're reading. So let me show you what it sounds like when I read this. Making effective videos. Tips for making videos. Keep videos shorter than 6 minutes. Speak at a fast pace using conversational language. You see how boring that sounds? So if you want to talk fast, that does improve engagement. And they might miss things, but if they do, just rewatch it. Not a big deal. All right, next thing is you don't over edit. And the reason is because if you make small mistakes, they actually improve engagement. So don't focus on making them perfect because that actually makes it more boring. If you make occasional slips once in a while, that actually keeps them engaged and makes it easier to watch, and they will enjoy them a lot more. So unless you completely blunder a lesson, just don't edit it. It's okay. Just keep mistakes in, especially if you are live coding. Like if you make a syntax error, keep that in because if you make everything perfect, students will think that they have to be perfect. And whereas if you make mistakes when you're demoing things, they will know that that is a normal part of the learning process. So keep your mistakes in, especially when you're coding. All right, more tips. All right, make them reusable. And the reason is that if you are really into blended learning and making a lot of videos, you will want to reuse them. So don't actually put the lesson number in the video itself. Just put it in the title of the video or the file name because you might want to change things around. You also don't want to reference the time. So for example, if you post a video in January, don't say welcome back from winter break because you might want to use that in June. And students will not, well, they might think you're a little strange if you put that in June. They might not realize it's because the video was posted in January. All right. If you are screen sharing, turn your webcam on. This is a huge thing that improves engagement. So the research shows that it's generally not a distraction if you have your face in the bottom corner of the screen. It reminds students that you made the video, you are their teacher, they are learning from you. And if you don't have it, they might kind of assume that it's a random video for a random person. But no, you are their teacher, you are making the content for them. If you have your webcam on, that will remind them and it'll help them feel like you're basically still a part of the picture, not just outsourcing videos from other places. All right, so for posting videos, I recommend YouTube, and the main reason is that you can turn on auto-generated subtitles. So if you do subtitles by hand, it is very tedious, but because YouTube is owned by Google, and Google has this, I guess, Google Translate software, and other software that lets you translate speech to text, this is a really fast process. And it's also fairly accurate. I've been really surprised at how accurate it is. It also has the ability to translate to different languages if you have students who want to have subtitles in another language. And one more benefit of YouTube is that if you use the playlist, you can easily search and find videos. So students aren't digging through a 20-minute video to find a timestamp. They look at a playlist, they look at the titles to find the one they want, and they can find them. All right, so here's a screenshot of one of my screencast videos. I have Replit going on. I have my webcam on, and on the side there is the playlist. So you can see from all the videos that they're under 5 minutes. One of them is kind of close at 4:57, but they're all under 5 minutes. Nothing in the video pertains to the lesson. I don't have a lesson number or anything. I have it in the title instead, which is modifiable. And I am making a mistake in the video. I am showing what happens if you don't use escape characters, is you get a syntax error. And well, this was an intentional mistake, but sometimes I make unintentional mistakes. But anyway, I include them in the video. I think it's really important to model making mistakes and learning from them. All right, so each video also comes with a note that I made on GitHub. And students have told me that they like having the opportunity to kind of skip the video and read the note instead. So basically everything that I go over in a video is also in note form. This also allows students to easily revisit stuff. If they don't want to rewatch a whole 5-minute video, they just find the note and look at the section that they need. They can also find code snippets for them to try out. So I have that complementing videos. All right, another screenshot. This is what my Replit Teams looks like. This is just Unit 1. The idea is that I have a bunch of exercises that teach very specific skills. And at the end is a project that uses all the skills they learned previously. All right, how much time do I have? I am over. I'm going to speed through this part. I'm sorry that I have to rush. All right, the last thing is mastery-based learning. I'll try to keep this quick. All right, so what is mastery-based grading? So mastery-based grading means that students are given a mastery status instead of a percentage or level. They don't move on to new material until they have demonstrated mastery of the prerequisite material. So basically, instead of giving a percentage grade like 80 or a level like a B, you tell them this is mastered or not mastered. That's all there is to it. And the reason you want to do this is because it's crucial for retention. So students who demonstrate mastery, this knowledge that they have is easier to access, it's easier to get out of the memory, and they remember it longer. It's also important for building confidence. So students who build mastery are much more confident learners. They will take on much more challenging tasks, and they will basically have more confidence to do what they want in life. Also, the focus will be on learning instead of grades. So if you don't give a percentage mark or a level, they will begin to focus more on the actual learning itself instead of the artificial number that gets attached to their assignments. All right, so what is mastery and how's it different from gradeless or ungrading? So gradeless basically means that you are reducing the number of grades given and you're only doing it to the bare minimum, which is usually based on the reporting period. So you might have to report at the end of a course what level they got or what percentage mark they got. Other than that, you don't mark anything else using a level. And ungrading is just another word for gradeless. They're both kind of used interchangeably. And it's not the same thing as mastery-based, but there is some overlap. And what I do is the overlap between them. So I use mastery in a gradeless form. So here's how I do that. All right, so I have exercises on Replit, and they are either not started, in progress, or completed, which means they have mastered it. There's no percentage marks, there's no 10 out of 10, it's just one of these 3 things. And the idea is that they don't move on to the next task, or at least they shouldn't move on, until they have completed the previous one. And the criteria, so what does it mean when they've completed it? So here are some criteria. They're not all present in every single assignment, but here are some examples anyway. So passing all of the input-output or the unit tests. So Replit Teams has it built in where you can make tests. The students run their program to see if they pass the tests, and then when they all pass, they can submit it. But that's not the only thing. I also want students to be sure to include line comments. That's something I just check by hand. They have to be relevant, and I usually have a minimum number they need for each task. Things like following conventions, so ensuring that they're using correct pacing, they are using good variable names, that sort of thing. I also have students sometimes put their own tests. So if I make the unit tests private-ish, so they can't see what they are, I also want them to include ones that they have made so that they are convinced the program works. They have included edge cases and other things that the unit tests may or may not have missed. And the last thing that's really important is for them to declare their sources. So for every assignment, I have them indicate who they had help from, what sites they used, and to indicate anything they copy-pasted. And this is incredibly helpful for preventing plagiarism. So here's what this looks like put together. So here's an example of an assignment from the student point of view. So they see on the panel on the right the links to the videos and notes, the requirements to pass, and the actual instructions. So that's what they see on there, and this one is complete. They have successfully printed the cat. This is what the source file looks like, sources file looks like. It's basically a plagiarism declaration that they didn't get excessive help, and if they did get help from someone, they indicate who they are, and that sort of thing. All right, I'm almost done. What do students think? So I could tell you all about what I think, but here's my feedback from students. All right, I'm just going to read these out because I'm going to try to save a bit of time. All right, it is very relaxing and stress is kept at a low. Meeting new people in this class who I've never met before, being able to socialize and work with people around me, doing all the projects. Ms. Strong is always there to help. The fact that you can do all the work whenever you want, making games and playing games, playing their own games that they built, not wasting time on cool math games, and the final project at the end of the unit they really liked. Did I mention this is highly collaborative? So class is very loud. Students are always helping each other. And one of the questions in the sources document is to indicate who helped you. They often say the person next to them helped them, or they worked in a small team, and that's completely acceptable because they help each other. They're not freeloading off of anyone, and I can overhear the conversations. I know they are actually collaborating instead of just one person doing the work and the other one's copying. So one of the things I can do is overhear these conversations because I have all of class time to interact with them. All right, what do they least enjoy? So some people said too much freedom, which is understandable because they're not used to it, but they did get used to it in the end. Class is loud. It is, I'm sorry about that, but it's a good type of loud. Another common thing they didn't like was coding itself. That's understandable. It's a challenging topic for a lot of people, so something that they didn't enjoy is coding. That's okay. Some people, actually quite a few people basically were saying that they would prefer the live lessons. Videos are nice, but live lessons are better, which is a good opinion. But also some people have the complete opposite opinion. So you can't please both of them. And ultimately, I do believe that videos are way more equitable. So that's why for these types of comments, whenever I hear them in class, I have a conversation with them. Let them know, yeah, I know. I know you prefer live lessons, but videos are way more equitable. And self-pacing only works with videos. Some students say they finished their work too early and got too bored. So for these students, what I started doing was I had some additional problems like from Project Euler and from DMOD, so just extra problems to keep them engaged that are good challenges for them. And sometimes they said my notes had typos. Yeah, I fix them though if they tell me. All right, I'm gonna end with a quote and that'll be it. All right, so I don't know who this person is, but I heard this at a PD session and it stuck with me. So as educators, our goal should be to be independence facilitators. And I really think that's what this model is about. It's about helping students become independent and doing it in a structured way where they can thrive. Sorry, Kelly Rudders, I don't actually know who you are, but I love your quote. All right, what questions? And I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Thank you for all being here. I'm going to go through the chat to see if I missed any questions. Was your model influenced by programmed learning? Can you elaborate on that, Miguel? I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. I think this model is respectful of students who have already prepared for success academically. Exactly, so students who come into class knowing pretty much everything already, they can spend their time focusing on those projects. And some of them go way out on these projects. I've seen some amazing like platform games that students have made that are way beyond high school level. And this model lets them basically breeze through the easy things for them and then focus really hard on projects that are fun to them and get graded for it. If you could talk about the projects. So it's fairly open-ended. So the idea is that the products have to include particular things. Like for example, the first one has to include, it has to be console-based. It's a one-player game. It has to contain conditionals, variables, line comments. Like I just list off some things they have to include, but really it's up to them what they want it to look like. And it basically allows them the freedom while still giving me stuff to mark. So I can ensure that it aligns with the expectations in the course, but it still gives them a lot of freedom to make fun things. Program learning, educational technique, care advice. Oh, maybe. So I guess, so my guess is that maybe the people from the Modern Classrooms Project Foundation are aware of that, and maybe they base off of that. I don't know. Okay, so thanks for staying behind. I went 15 minutes over and I started 7 minutes late, so I apologize for the timing, and I did rush at the end, and I did skip some things that I wanted to flesh out more, but anyway, thank you for coming. And is this recorded? I think so. I see a recording icon. So where is it posted? I don't know. But anyway, thanks for being here, everyone. I'm gonna stop sharing.